Hey everyone, I'm Joe and today I'm doing a video that I know is always highly anticipated for pretty much every single booktube channel out there, and indeed every booktuber going is making this exact video at the moment, and that is my favourite books of the year for 2017. Now 2017 was a really good reading year as far as books go. I read an awful lot of extremely good books, so cutting that large amount down to just a relatively small number was frankly extremely difficult and really horrible, because there's many books I wish I could have talked about, but frankly it would have been a ridiculously large number, and well, that's not really a favourite if I talk about a quarter of what I've read in the year, is it? So I've managed to cut it down to, and this is coincidental related to the year, 17. So I'm doing a 17 in 17 video, Baxter. Anyway, I'll get started to talking about the books. The first of which is The Continuous Katherine Mortenhoe by D.G. Compton. Now, this is one of the SF Masterworks. As you know, I'm rather a big fan of them. I have rather a lot at this point. And this is really quite an interesting science fiction book, because it is one that, well, for one thing, I did a separate review of it, so I'm not going to talk too much in detail now. But suffice to say, it's interesting because it is a speculative fiction, science fiction. He's predicting reality TV, and the idea that somebody's death could become a reality TV program, and it's really dark and quite disturbing, but extremely intelligently written and very thoughtfully written as well. It's not just sort of shock value. This is really makes you think and dwell on the way a society is now, because yeah, again, it's another author who's managed to predict certain things about the future and make some interesting predictions on what could happen if we are not careful, and this was just really good. I'll link that review in the description box below anyway. The second book that I really loved in the year, I read not long after The Continuous Katherine Mortenhoe, and indeed I've done a separate review of this book, so I'm not going to talk too much about it now, but that is The Massacre of Mankind by Stephen Baxter. Now, I actually met Stephen Baxter and got him to sign this book on the day of release, and I managed to have a 10-minute conversation with him. Now, that did not affect my opinion of the book, of course, because I wouldn't allow that to happen. This was really interesting. This is a direct sequel to The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This is not the first time that Baxter has done a sequel to a Wells' books, of course, and this was, I thought, really well done, because I thought the way The War of the Worlds was written was interesting, but it did have some noticeable flaws to my way of thinking, because obviously when it was written in 1898 or something, around that time. This is obviously modern, so it uses modern understanding, but it doesn't go away from the original as such. It's still War of the Worlds feel with Baxter's writing, but also a glimmer of H.G. Wells, so it's an interesting mix, and I really did enjoy it. The fact that the main character that you are reading the journals of is a female character rather than the War of the Worlds' male character is interesting as well. So I really did enjoy this. Next up is an ebook that I read on my Kindle, and that is On the Edge of Gunfight by Corinne Duyvis. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that surname correctly. Now, this was a really interesting science fiction book. It is a sort of dystopian book where the world has sort of collapsed as we know it, and now there are basically generation ships taking off to go to the stars, and humanity is basically abandoning Earth, because we know that there is an impending disaster that will basically wipe out or make life on Earth extremely awful for millennia, frankly, and make it like a nightmare scenario to live in. And one group of people, well, there's people that don't manage to get on these normal generation ships, and it's the one girl and her mother. They go to look for her sister, and yeah, things happen. I don't want to say too much more, frankly, than that, but it's interesting. The main character has problems of her own, and it's very interesting. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to say too much more because it will give away too much, but it was really well written, very thoughtfully written and very carefully written, what with the idea of a disability, you know, so you always have to be careful there. But this was done really well, and I really did enjoy it. I thought it was very deeply written, you know, really sort of delicately phrased in parts. The fourth book that I'm going to talk about is the one that I did another separate review of, and that is The Rats by James Herbert. Now this is only a fairly short book, and it is a fairly simple premise, but it's extremely powerful, because the idea is that in London a new type or breed of rat comes along, and this rat is much larger and far more aggressive and also more intelligent than most other rats, and it starts killing people in large numbers all over London, and yeah, it goes from there basically. It's like a sort of national disaster, frankly, for London. And I did a separate review of this, I'm not going to say too much now, but suffice to say it was dark, well written, and the pace was fantastic. You know, there are lighter moments, there are darker moments, and also there are slow moments and faster moments, and all this together works into a really interesting novel, which I thought just worked for me at the time, and I expect it will work in the future. And because it's also quite short, it manages to keep to the point and it keep the focus good. So I was really quite pleased with this novel. The next book is one that during the wrap up that I talked about it in, I think I probably glossed over it a bit too quickly, frankly, which is a shame because I actually do think it's fantastic. Well, obviously it's one of my favourite books of the year, and that is The Cyberiad by Stanislaw Lem. Now this is my first ever book by Lem, and it won't be my last. Lem is a Polish author. This is a translated edition, and this is a short story collection. Most of them have a science fiction feel to them, and indeed do have technology and such, and they are written in a really unusual manner. I can't explain how, because it's really quite unusual. It's just so unusual that I just don't know how to word it, frankly, literally. And suffice to say though, it's just brilliantly put together. This collection is, most of the stories have the same two sort of characters on the whole, and they are creating technology, and I can't say too much because I'll give things away because there are short stories in it, but it's weird but wonderful, and the writing was fantastic, and this actually made me think of somebody like Ray Bradbury, oddly enough. Actually the writing was, I don't know, you just notice the writing style and the prose itself, the actual words usage, you really do pay attention to it, and it's just fantastic. It really was. And I can't praise this book enough, which frankly at the time I didn't praise it very much, to be honest. I sort of glossed over it a bit quickly, which is why I really want to make sure that people are aware of it now, because this is a brilliant book. It's not new, by the way, either. The next book I'm going to talk about is Tigana by Gavriel Kay. This is my first ever book by Kay, and it will not be my last, because I obviously, as it's in this video, really enjoyed it. Now, I did a separate review of this many months ago, which I will link in the description box below, so I'm not going to say too much now. Suffice to say, it is a fantasy book with fantastic writing ideas and some interesting writing styles within it. He uses memory as a interesting sort of fulcrum where the plot focuses on. It's about forgetting your links to a kingdom, and what does that mean for you as a person? Does it change who you are? Can you still be the person that you should have been if you can't remember where you come from? It's interesting, some ideas in this, and I really did like the writing, and I thought it's overall fantastic, frankly. The seventh book that I'm going to talk about is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Now this is a really interesting book because it is a science fiction book, and basically it starts off with Earth has been basically devastated and humanity is living in generation ships. One of these generation ships goes to a world and tries to settle there, and things don't necessarily go the way they expect. Generations later, some survivors that were living in a space station of sorts in the solar system, they go to Earth and find some indications of what happened, and then they basically head off and come and find this world that humanity tried to inhabit many generations before. And it's interesting, let's sort of say this, and if you don't like spiders, this book will not be a good book for you because it features spiders, big spiders, which sounds strange, but go with it because it is both fantastic and weird and wonderful in every way. And indeed, Rachel, known as Colonnade, she doesn't like spiders, and yet she still likes the book. So frankly, even if you don't like spiders, you still may well enjoy this book because it's got some really interesting ideas and the writing is fantastic. Next up is another ebook, and that is Moroda by L.L. McNeil. Now, this is an independently published novel, and it's also the debut novel for L.L. McNeil, from what I know on Twitter. And this was, simply put, a really fun and well-paced novel. It is the first of 6 novels in the Lunaria world, and I am really looking forward to the other novels, the second of which will be published at the start of 2018, I think in March or April. So I am greatly looking forward to that. Actually, it's one of my most anticipated novels for the start of 2018, in fact. This was just, as I said, well-paced, fun. It had an interesting world, interesting characters. The plot line, which I'm not going to talk too much of because I talked about it in wrap-ups and such, was just really interesting. And I did a separate review of this as well, so I'll link to that below. But I would really recommend this book, especially as there will be more in the series, of which I am really looking forward to. It should be interesting. It really does show some serious promise. Next up, I'm going to talk about The Goblin Emperor by Katherine Addison. Now, this is an interesting fantasy novel where it is based not around humans or the normal sort of races, but it is around a half-goblin character, and indeed the kingdom that he is a part of. Basically, at the start of the book, this character, he finds out that his dad who and various relatives have been killed somehow, and he's now basically going to become the emperor of the kingdom. And this is news to him because he was living far away and was sort of away from all the politics of court. And now he's got to come back, and suddenly he's thrust into political life with the associated work that goes along with it, as well as various assassination attempts on him as well, because his dad's death wasn't exactly obviously natural, as you might have obviously expected from something like this. And it's really well written. The ideas are fantastic, and the fact that it's a non-human character was quite an interesting little twist as well. They're thinking of the characters is pretty much human, but not exactly, because the way they think of certain things is interesting, and I just really did enjoy this book, no end. Next up is the smallest book of my favourites, and that is Concrete Island by J.G. Ballard, and it's really small, it's only about 130 pages long. Now, J.G. Ballard is known for writing science fiction, but he's also for writing literary science fiction, and this is more literary than science fiction. Really, it's not really science fiction at all. It's an interesting concept. Basically, it is a sort of fairly well-off guy. He's driving his fairly fast car along the motorway one day. The car spins off the road, crashes into a isolated area by motorway, and he cannot get out of this area because he's injured himself. The car's wrecked, and this area is all fenced off, obviously, because it's like a wasteland area by the side of the motorway, and it's a very deeply and intensely psychological novel about him stuck in this area on his own, and he thinks he's going to end up dying there, literally next to a busy road with millions of people driving on it all the time. Yet he thinks he's going to die because he can't get any help because it's down this big slope, and he can't climb up it because of his leg, and it's dark and sort of quite deeply disturbing in points, but it really does work well, and it really does make you question society. Frankly, that's what Ballard does a lot. He makes you question the essence of society itself, the world we live in, and because this is speculative science fiction as well, which he does really well, and this is frankly impressive considering the actual sheer length of it. I mean, it's a short book, but it makes you think more than most books that are like 3 times or 5 times this length. And I'm really do think this is something that people should read, or anything by Ballard basically, because he's impressive. And finally, the last individual book that I'm going to talk about is Swords Point by Ellen Kushner. Now this is the first book in a trilogy, but this first book really does stand out. It's about a swordsman, and in a kingdom, in a town that really values swordsmen. Basically, if you have a dispute with somebody else, you can hire a swordsman to duel with either the person in question or another swordsman that they hire. So you have two swordsmen dueling each other, and the winner basically wins the argument and wins their way with whatever it happens to be, whether it's a business deal or whatever else. And this swordsman, he sent via, he had a duel with somebody, and things don't exactly go the way they normally do, and it becomes complicated. In theory, I should be doing a review of the trilogy, but I'm not sure if I'm actually going to end up getting around to it at this point. It's been a few months now, so if I don't, then I would recommend it here, because it was fantastic. The whole trilogy is fantastic, actually, but especially this first one, Sword Point, because the writing is fantastic, and it's just really was something special about this book, frankly. So that's it for the individual books. Now I'll talk about the various series and things that I also really enjoyed, of which there are 6 of in total. So the first of which is an ebook series, and that is the Gamehouse series by Claire North. Now this comprises 3 novellas, and those are The Serpent, The Thief and The Master. I read these very early in the year. I think they were like the 2nd, 3rd and 4th book I read in 2017 or something very close to that, and they just really were quite interesting. These are fantasy novels set in an alternative Earth where magic does work, although obviously most people are unaware of it, or at least not fully aware of it. And I can't say too much about them because I'll give away the plot, especially as they are novellas. But suffice to say, there is a games house where you can go to and you can gamble anything. You can gamble your sense of humour, you can gamble years of your life, and if you win, then obviously you gain something really significant, whatever that happens to be. And if you lose, obviously you lose that thing. So if you could lose your sense of humour, you could lose your youth, you could lose all sorts of things. It's quite dark, the concept, but it really does work well. And the 3 novels focus on different characters, but they build up into something greater. And that greater element of the 3 novellas is frankly fantastic. I really did enjoy these, and I would really recommend them because they're just cleverly written, they're cleverly combined into something more than the sum of their parts. The next novella series that I'm going to talk about is the Penrick series by Lois McMaster Bujold. Now, I read 5 of these in 2017. The first one I read at the very end of 2016, so that's what I'm going to talk about this time for, because I've read 5 of them. I think I should be allowed to. The first of them that I read in 2017 was Penrick and the Shaman. Now this is an ongoing series of novellas by Bujold, and these are set in the same world as the other Manchalian trilogy, of which I also read and really enjoyed. These focus on the character of Penrick, who is a young guy who basically ends up with a demon inside his mind, and this demon allows him to cast magic, and that is how magic works in this world. And he goes on a series of adventures, essentially. Some of them are purely sort of individual, in the 5 novellas. Some of them are overall an overarching storyline. They all do link up in some ways though, and the character of Penrick and Desdemona and the way they interact with each other, and indeed other people, is really quite interesting and fun. And I just love Bujold's writing, I really do, which I'm going to prove the point now. Although before proving that point, I'm going to first talk about a trilogy that I read this year that I really was impressed by, and that is the Greg Mandel trilogy by Peter F. Hamilton. Now, as you may know, I really like Peter F. Hamilton. I've got his books there. I've been steadily reading through his books. I've only got a few books remaining now of these. I've got about 5, I think, or 4, until other ones I own. And this is a really interesting trilogy because this is actually his earliest trilogy that he read. Indeed, the earliest 3 books he ever read. So his writing style has not developed into what it becomes in later novels, of which I'm very used to, but it's still unmistakably Peter F. Hamilton. And this is quite interesting because this is, obviously science fiction, but it's a science fiction thriller trilogy with some interesting characters. The crimes are different, and I just really liked them because also elements of this trilogy made me think weirdly of William Gibson. I can't explain how it made me think of Gibson because frankly it's too complex to talk about, the little elements of them, but there's little elements that's tied to Gibson, but also a few other classic science fiction authors. You can tell that he was inspired by, and I really did enjoy this trilogy. Next, I'm going to prove my point about Bujold because my favourite long-running series, well, joint favourite long-running series this year was the Vorkosigan Saga by Lois, McMaster, Bujold. This is a 16-book series. It is science fiction, and every single book is absolutely fantastic. They are just really well written, really funny, great characters, great world. Everything works together. And frankly, I've never read a series where every single book is so incredibly good. I mean, not one of the books out of 16 ever drops. Every book is really high quality and simply fantastic, which, considering the amount of them, and I mean, most of the series that I've read that are long series, you always have, you have a couple of good novels, then it drops, then a couple of good, then it drops. Normally it goes up and down. This doesn't. This is just all out, right at the top, every single novel, and it's fantastic, frankly. And I just loved this series. I cannot recommend the Vorkosigan Saga enough. I really can't. In theory, I should be doing a series review of it, but at this point, I'm not sure because it's been a while. So hopefully, I can still do that though. The next long series that I'm going to talk about is the Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes series, of which this is the first of The Beekeeper's Apprentice by Laurie R. King. This is a sort of crime and mystery series. It is set obviously and based around the an alternative version of Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, and it introduces a new character, obviously namely Mary Russell, who is a much younger character than Sherlock Holmes, and she basically bumps into Sherlock Holmes one day when he's retired and looking after his bees, and she finds out, and well, they both find out about each other, that they have got the same way of thinking and the same way of looking at the world, and frankly they end up, being together and solving crimes and such, obviously. They're all just really well written and really cleverly written with some interesting characters, and the way their characters are developed are really interesting. This is not a finished series as well. There will be another book in 2018, which I'm greatly looking forward to. So this is currently my favourite ongoing series of its kind. And I really would recommend it heavily. And finally, the last series, which I'm glad to talk about because the sun in my face is starting to really irritate me now because it's actually making my eyes water really badly, is the Fallen Empire series by Lindsay Buroker. Now, I did a separate review of this series much earlier in 2017, so I'm not going to say too much now as far as the plot goes. Suffice to say, it is a 8-book science fiction series. It is a series of adventures around the crew of a spaceship. Obviously, each character of the ship is really interesting and obviously sort of fairly diverse and eclectic, but they work well together. They go on a series of adventures, which are obviously grand and a bit over the top in ways, but really fun. It's fast paced, and frankly, each book is like an episode of a television series like Star Trek or something, where each has links onto one another, but each does start and finish that particular storyline really effectively. And I just loved this series, I really did. And I will look into more Buroker in the future, although I believe I've read now every book that's set within the same universe, which there are 12 in total. So unfortunately, there's no more of this particular world left. So I'll see what else she's written. I know she's written quite a few other things though, so I'll be interested to see. So that's it for my favourites of 2017, and this is just a few of them. Quite a few interesting and diverse selection by some really interesting and varied authors over many different time periods. Some of these books are very new, some of them are rather old. If you've read any of this, then obviously please leave a comment. Also, please let me know what your favourite books of the year are, whether it's favourite 3 books, favourite 5, favourite 10, whatever they happen to develop mine, because I'm always interested and eager to find new books and new authors to read myself. So this might help me get interested in new books, which obviously then I can talk about and more interesting videos, I hope. Anyway, so with that said, that is it for this video, and indeed that is it for all the books of 2017. Hopefully you and me, we both have extremely good reading years in 2019. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.